What are Agile Scrum artifacts and how do Scrum teams use them? Hi there, my name is Josh Spector. I'm one of the founders here at Product HQ. In this video, we'll give you a full breakdown of what Agile Scrum artifacts are and how you should use these tools in product management. But before we do that, make sure to subscribe to be first in line to know whenever we publish videos on product management from this channel. So Agile Scrum artifacts provide and capture key information at each sprint checkpoint to ensure everything remains on track. And there are three types of Agile Scrum artifacts. You have the product backlog, the sprint backlog, and the product increment. This is according to the Scrum Guide, which is a useful online tool that we regularly refer to in our product management courses. And we'll make sure to put a link to it in the description below this video. And the product backlog is a list of everything we could do. The sprint backlog is everything we're going to do in a 2 to 4 week period. And the product increment is everything we have done. So let's look at a product backlog. The product owner is in charge of the structuring and also the grooming of the product backlog. The product owner sets what's on this list, who views and edits this list, and most importantly, decides what order everything is in this list. This includes improvements, bug fixes, new features, tests, and test criteria. This product backlog is assessed by data from customers, competitors, and business analysis. A spreadsheet, database, or software management tool usually manages this, like Jira, ClickUp, and others. Every item in the product backlog is marked down as a requirement. So what is a requirement? Well, every requirement in the product backlog has 4 different categories. The first thing is the order. If this is the most important thing that the Scrum team needs to do, then the team should mark this down as 1, and so on and so forth. The second category is the description, which briefly describes the issue and challenge. And third, we have the estimate. This looks at how much this requirement roughly costs to update. And the value is a short description of how valuable this change will be to the product. Let's take a look at a simple example. You run an e-commerce company, and at present, your company does not have an automated email asking for feedback after every purchase. Well, first, you would assign it in order. You might think that this is crucial. Your competitors have this feature. Your customers have complained about its absence. So you might make this number 1. Then in the category, you explain that it's an automated feedback email for your customers. And then you estimate how much this will cost to implement onto your product. In the last here, you describe how valuable this will be to your product, so the impact that it's going to have. And so every item on the product backlog contains answers to all of these 4 categories. Let's now move on to the sprint backlog. The product backlog is everything we could do, and the sprint backlog is everything we are going to do now. So once a product backlog has been set in place, a sprint backlog is then set up during a sprint planning meeting. The Scrum team pulls off top priority items from the product backlog and puts them in the sprint backlog. A sprint backlog has a more rigid set of tasks. It usually has a set of instructions that the team needs to achieve by the end of the sprint. And the team needs to prevent scope creep. This is when there is continuous or uncontrolled growth in the assigned work. And while the team constantly updates the product backlog, the sprint backlog should remain unchanged where possible. The work shouldn't deviate from its initial aims. Think of the 100-meter sprint in athletics. You go along a clear path in the same direction. This is not a marathon where you make different turns in different directions. This is a straight sprint. The sprint backlog has requirements taken from the product backlog, but also an overarching sprint goal. So a company is doing a sprint, and the sprint goal is to improve customer retention by, let's say, 20% by implementing a feedback system. And notice how it doesn't vaguely say that it just wants to improve customer retention. This example wants to improve it by 20% and has an exact figure in mind. The items taken from the product backlog are to analyze customer reviews online to identify opportunities and key pain points, to add feedback button to 5 main landing pages, to include pop-up customer service chat box to request feedback and provide support in real time, and to create an automated email asking for feedback after every completed transaction. So the sprint isn't a random set of tasks. There is a continuing theme of engaging customers based on similar product backlog items. So let's jump into the third artifact involved in a Scrum. This is the product increment. So once a Scrum team completes a task, these become customer deliverables. These are things you can increment into the product. It's something from your product backlog which has been done by the team. It's up to the product owner to decide whether they want this to be released into the product. And before the Scrum decides on whether something can be incremented, it needs to be done. But how do we know when something is officially done? Well, to avoid any confusion, Scrum teams have a specific set of criteria for when something is done. This is known as the definition of done, or DoD. And this gives everyone on the Scrum team a clear understanding of when something is completed. So when you think something is done, there's a simple checklist to look at to make sure that it is done. Has it been peer reviewed? Has it been tested properly? Has it been cleared by stakeholders? This criterion varies from company to company, but it's important that there is an agreed upon checklist before something is officially done. If it does not meet the definition of done, it cannot be released or even presented for the sprint review. And there we have it. You should now have a better idea of what Agile Scrum artifacts are and how they work. If you enjoyed the video and you feel like you now have a better understanding of how to build great products, make sure to go ahead and give the video a like, subscribe to our channel so you can get future videos on how to build great products. And with that said, I'll go ahead and see you on some of our other helpful content videos where we cover all different things about product management. Cheers.